Hey guys, welcome back to True Sound Studios. I'm Weezna. Today, as a continuation of my hybrid mixing setup, today I want to show you the analog gear that I actually use on the particular channels when I'm mixing. Let's start with drums, and particularly the drum bus. Now, because I do mix a bunch of different styles of music here, the drum bus would be if it is a drum kit. So the drum bus is also what I call shells in the DAW, if you guys saw the previous video. So that would be kick, snare, and toms all coming through the stereo channel. Now, on a track like a hip hop or pop or trap song, you know, it's typically more like kick, snare, and hi-hat. So in that type of song, I would do a mono kick channel and a mono snare channel, and then the hi-hats would go through a different channel. But that's the way I break up the drum bus, and obviously that depends on the actual style of song. So on that drum bus, it first goes to the Audioscape decomp. Now this is like a compressor saturation unit. It is absolutely amazing on drums. I cannot say enough amazing things about this. Such an amazing piece of gear for drums. It is so good. I also use it on master bus too, and it's like saturation mode, but it just does that crazy pumping drum thing. It just puts the drums in an amazing place. I just absolutely love it. So after it leaves the Audioscape decomp, it goes up here to the Arsenal Audio by API, this EQ. Now in this particular song that I'm mixing right now, this is in stereo mode, so like a drum bus mode, meaning kick, snare, and toms are all coming through a stereo channel into the decomp, and then out of the decomp into the Arsenal Audio as stereo. So I mimic the low mid, the high mid, and the high channels, you know, because it is stereo. But because it is separated, you do have the option of, you know, slightly tweaking the stereo image depending on, you know, what that song particularly needs. So we're just going to keep moving along with the big faders here. So the next channel is the guitar channel. So once again, if this is going to be a rock song, metal song, whatever, this would be my guitar channels, and this is going to be rhythm guitar. So the big wide stereo guitars. If it's more like a trap hip hop song or a pop song, it turns into my stereo synth bus. Now this would be all the super wide synths or pianos or pads, things like that. Really kind of like what I consider to be the main chords of the song. So for these guitar / synth channel, what I typically use is either this pair of Ward Beck EQs. These are M463. A lot of people call these the Canadian Neves. They are super smooth. They can be really crispy. You can see they're like fully parametric. All three bands have a Q, frequency, and a gain and cut. It just super flexible EQ. Sounds so good on the synth and guitar type stuff where I really want to get in there and carve things in or out or whatever I want to do. On the other hand, you have the Spl Stereo Vitalizer. That's the MK2. I also really like that because that is to me is a very untraditional type EQ. It has these tuning and process frequencies that kind of shape and kind of sculpt things in a unique way. So sometimes it works really well, especially on electric guitars, and then sometimes I don't like it. It does something a little too unfamiliar to me. And then typically what I don't use on the rhythm or that synth bus ends up on the lead bus. So like lead synth, lead guitars. So kind of flip-flop between the two depending on what is going to work for that particular song. So guys, if you are liking this video, please click that like button. Okay, so then we move on to the vocal main channel. So this is my main lead vocal. It's always in mono because vocals are in mono. All my stereo vocals coming over here, so that would be like backups, doubles, harmonies, that type of stuff. But let's just focus on V main. So for this vocal main bus, it first hits the Locomotive Audio weight tank compressor. Now this is like a very mu compressor. It's got some drive in it. To me, it kind of does the LA2A type thing in a way where it's just kind of like like gooey type compression that just really holds a vocal in place. I think this does such an amazing job on vocals. It is on pretty much every single vocal that I do, unless for some reason I have to mix it in the box. This is on the vocals, just so good. And it has this like round and drive switch. So on a lot of vocals, you know, maybe it's more like a pop song, I keep it on the round, which is kind of like the type of saturation / distortion that it gives. But if you want some really aggressive vocals, you know, on a heavier rock song, metal type tracks, that type of thing, I definitely go with the drive. It adds just more saturation, just helps thicken up the vocal. And what it does to vocals, the smoothing effect is so amazing. So then it leaves the compressor and it goes into my third Ward Beck EQ. Now this one, you can see it doesn't have the fully sweepable Q frequencies on this guy here, but that's just because typically after it leaves this compressor, I've already done some mixing with plugins in the DAW to kind of get the vocal a little closer to what I want, and then I'm just kind of making up for whatever this compressor takes or whatever I need to add to the track to get the vocal to cut through the mix. And it's also really great to get that nice, bright, crisp vocal sound that, you know, so many artists love these days. So if you guys like this content and you want to see more, really consider subscribing. So then we have the Dolby channel. Now this is actually a vocal channel, but this uses a Dolby noise reduction unit that has been modified by, of course, me. And it turns it into like a high frequency exciter. So let's check out that. So this is that Dolby unit. This is a Dolby 360. Oh yeah, it says right there, with the Cat22 card. What it does is it gives you like this super high frequency exciter type sound. So it gives you this super crispy vocal sound, like this crazy amount of air. So I use this, and then the output of this goes into the DBX 163X compressor. And really what this is doing is acting kind of like somewhat of a, you know, high frequency exciter, but then also like a parallel compressor for my vocal channel. So you can see it's doing, you know, sometimes around maybe 6 dB of noise reduction. So because this Dolby unit is boosting all the brightness on the track, and it's an older unit, sometimes the noise floor on this is a little bit too high depending on the part of the song. So I'm also using a DBX 563X silencer, which is kind of like a high frequency noise gate type thing. And it just helps make sure that, you know, when there isn't a vocal coming through here, it just really silences and eliminates all that noise. So now we get to the last set of fader channels. Now there's still 10 more inputs that I'm gonna show you, but at least for the main faders, this is the vocal harmony, which is a stereo channel. So this is all of the harmonies, the doubles, the vocal effects, pretty much everything but the main vocal. So the V harmony stereo channel runs into this. This is like a SSL bus compressor type clone that I personally built. This is just doing some light compression on those backup vocals, really just cutting out any peaks that I need to take care of and just smoothing out the vocal in general. And then it goes into the API. Now these are actually 550A EQs, but I bought these faceplates because blah, 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 long story. When I bought them, all the faceplates were damaged, the knobs were gone. Obviously I got a deal on them, but so they show up as 954s, but they're actually 558 EQs. And I'm just doing a little bit of, you know, a little bit of EQing just to make sure that these vocals, these backup vocals, harmonies, that type of stuff, all just cut through the mix nicely. Okay, so you have faders 1 through 8, but because I'm not using this as a recording mixer and I'm not sending audio to an artist, the Q channels are also now inputs, and that gives me channels 9 through 16s as inputs, which is marked up top here. So first we have room, left, and right. Now this is not just my room channels, this is the drum rooms, and it's also my drum overheads. Now if this was like a hip hop, trap, pop song, whatever, this would turn into like my hi-hat slash crash cymbal channel. So on that stereo drum room and overhead channel is a pair of DBX 160X compressors. You can see I'm running them in limit mode. And really what I'm trying to do with this is to kind of shave some of the peaks off of that room sound and the overheads, just to make sure that they're not too sharp, and having it in limit mode really seems to help work out really nicely. Also, I have the Apocalypse Audio, which doesn't have any of the, this is just a demo unit, but what this is doing is it's adding some saturation to these channels. So after it leaves the 160X, it goes into this, and this has a tube in it, and it has solid state distortion, so I can add some grit, some bite to these overheads and room sounds. So not only do I make these YouTube videos, but I mix and master full time, and I do all this online. I've been doing this for 21 years. So if you're looking for your own song to be mixed or mastered, please shoot me an email. All the information is down below in the description. So then we get to the leads stereo channel. So this is a stereo input, and I am running this as leads, as in like synth leads, guitar leads. And once again, you know, depending on whether I use the Ward Becks on the main rhythm guitars or the Vitalizer, I just use the other one on the leads channel. In the very short future, a 500 series rack is going to go in here, and I'm going to have some more additional processing for my guitar and guitar leads channels so that I can do a little bit more than just EQ. So then we move on to bass. Now this bass channel is a mono channel, so it's just mono bass. So let me show you guys what the bass looks like. So over in Bassland, first the signal runs into the SansAmp. Now, I know some people don't love SansAmp for bass, they pretty much use it for everything else, but me personally, I've always loved a SansAmp on bass, and therefore I use one. Even on like 808s and stuff like that, this thing sounds so good with the way I mix. I really can get this thing to just like really fit perfectly into my mixes. I also love that it has, you know, a nice kind of simple EQ. You can blend in that drive saturation from the SansAmp. Out of the SansAmp goes into a DBX 160X. And here I'm really just trying to control the overall output of the bass. Just do a little bit of compression. It's only on like 3:1 typically. But it's just helping to control the low end too of the bass, which is another reason why I like to use the 160X. And then finally it runs into the Yuri 565 filter set. So this is just a filter. But with the low and the high filter, I really feel like you can sculpt the bass just with those filters alone. And then it's got the two kind of notch peaks, which I will use to just further sculpt the bass. But I think it works so well on bass. These three units have just been really working nicely for the way that I mix bass. So then we have the parallel compression channel. Now this parallel compression is fed from the DAW, so I can select, you know, whatever I want to send to this channel and automate it with the DAW. It is hitting the Dynamite compressor. If you've never heard one of these things, crazy amount of attack that adds to the drums. It is the most aggressive compressor as far as adding attack and punch to drums that I've ever heard. It is absolutely fantastic. So in my case, I only have one of them. So I am using it obviously as a mono signal. So it's going into the Dynamite, getting this crazy amount of attack. And then it runs into the Dynamic, which I'm not using it as a mic preamp. I'm more using it as a line preamp that just have this 3-band EQ on it so that I can actually sculpt the sound of that compressor afterwards, you know, so I can choose to add a little bit more or less snap with the treble and, you know, that type of thing. But you know, combined with the Audioscape decomp on the main drum shells bus, the DBX 160Xs on the room/overhead tracks, and then the Dynamite compressor as the parallel compression. This is all just for drums. It's all to get that crazy amount of attack, parallel compression, just awesome drum sound by using, you know, just analog units. And then for the top channels, to round it off, I have the effects, which is once again in stereo. So this is just a stereo pair. coming out right from the DAW. And this really just goes straight from the DAW and comes right into these channels. At this moment, I actually don't have a piece of gear to run into that, which is also nice because this stereo channel doesn't have any, analog processing on it. It's also a great channel that I'll run, reverse cymbals, sound effects, and things like that through it. So it's kind of like an unaffected channel that just runs out to the mixer. And then for my verb and chorus channels, so these are my effects sends. So verb comes over to here, and I'm using the Alesis Quadraverb. Typically I'm using like a medium or short room sound on this, and then it's running out of here into the Alesis MIDI Verb 2, and I'm using this setting, it's 64, it's like a chorus. So I have verb coming out of here, it's getting mixed with some chorus, and then last, which is not even on, I'm using the BBE 482. This is kind of like a simple equalizer. It's adding a little, you can add brightness or low end to that reverby, chorusy sound, and it's just a nice way to sculpt a little bit of that sound. And then the chorus channel is running through the Clark Technique. This is the third dimension chorus. So this is definitely a different chorus than that. Plus it's not being mixed with any reverb. So this is just straight chorus. But I love, love, love chorus on vocals, on guitars. I just think it widens vocals, it widens guitars. It's just absolutely fantastic. So this is just dedicated chorus that I can send analog. So then I got a couple pieces of gear over here. There's the BBE 482i, which I used to use a lot on kick and snare, but I don't really use it anymore. I got this noise gate, which is, I don't really use that anymore. This is kind of just saving space for some new gear that's coming in that I unfortunately don't have yet, as well as these face plates that are backwards. These are just holding spaces while I get some gear in. But I just want to point out this is a piece of rack gear that I made. You can see it's got 6 transformers in it. And I will patch these transformers in just as line signals through my patch bay onto certain things that I want to, add that transformer saturation to. These 4 smaller transformers are definitely on the cheaper side, but because they're cheaper, they don't do as good of a job as keeping the signal nice and transparent. So they really do add a lot of color. So I can patch in these 6 transformers into any channel on the SSL-X desk through the patch bay, and just add transformer saturation to really any channels that I want. And then up top, I do have a couple of these DBX 263X de-essers that sometimes I'll use on vocals if I have a really, really bad vocal, but a lot of times I like to fix that in the DAW before it comes out analog. And then the last thing that I didn't point out was these 2 Harrison channels. So yes, like Harrison Mix Bus DAW, these are 2 Harrison channels. Now I'm just using these. I have another pair of transformers that's behind the monitor here, and I'm just using these as line amplifiers just to drive a crazy amount of signal into them. If I want to do some sort of parallel processing with a whole bunch of gain on it, I'll use these. And then last but definitely not least, on the main mix bus, I can do an insert, and that allows me to run these choice pieces of gear. We got the Audioscape G-Bus bus compressor, the IGS rubber band stereo Pultec EQ, and the Apocalypse Audio tape saturator. So the signal first goes into the Apocalypse Audio tape saturator. This is a mastering tape saturator. This does some really amazing things. It adds this nice 300 to 500 hertz bump in that low mid area. Adds some really amazing thickening to the track. It adds a little bit of width, and then it also does this thing that's amazing is it takes all this super harsh brightness and it sounds like it almost drops it down an octave. I don't know how to describe it, but what this does with it being on and off is really amazing. I'm gonna have some audio demos of this thing coming soon. So then after it leaves this mastering tape saturator, it goes into the Audioscape G-Bus bus compressor, where I'm typically just, you know, I'm using it like a glue compressor, typically with the side chain off so that it's not being affected too heavily by the low end of the track, especially on these, you know, really bass heavy mixes like these trap songs and pop songs. And then from here, it goes into the IGS Pultec, where it really depends on the track and what I'm doing. But, you know, I'm typically boosting a little 60 Hertz. Sometimes I'm cutting a little 60 Hertz. And then often boosting 8 or 10K, maybe cutting a little 20 if needed. But this is my full mix bus, and these 3 units really do a ton to the overall sound of the mix. And you know, I just can't wait to show you guys some audio examples of what these 3 units do. So if you want to get into buying analog gear and you want to do this hybrid mixing, or just maybe just analog mixing, you know, buy a piece of gear with the intention of, you know, it could be used on a whole bunch of different things, but when you find that thing that you really like it on, you know, that's really when a piece of gear is really truly working for you. So one of the next videos I'm going to be doing is all about the SSL X-Desk, how I use it, how to get all those inputs into this and use it as an actual mixer that you can use in this hybrid mixing setup. And I'll go over a whole bunch of details about it. So as always, thanks for watching this video. Please click that like button if you did like this video. If you guys want to get a hold of me, find me on Instagram. Definitely still the best place to get a hold of me. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.